What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, and welcome to the Week 20 Competition Prep Vlog Update Series. So, lots to dive into today, so get ready to roll up your sleeves. We got some refeed action going on. So, if you recall from the last update series video, my prep is going to be a little bit different than most because I'm doing such a long prep with so many shows. So, because of that, I was more aggressive with my Phase 2, and my Phase 3 was relatively short. I'm kind of blending Phase 3 and Phase 4 to an extent, but this technically was the start of Phase 4, so I technically only had 1 week in Phase 3, in which I was dropping both fat and protein prior to the introduction of ketogenic caloric refeeds, because this week, Week 20, I introduced my first ketogenic caloric refeed. And we're going to dive into that, but real quick, I'm going to give you a little synopsis of the spreadsheet as we're looking so far. I just want to point out this weight trend here. So you can see my weight is, again, not linear. This is not a linear process, but most certainly trending in the right direction over time, which is what we want. All right, now scrolling down, let's get to the actual Week 20 here. And this week saw my weight start at 160.8 pounds. And then I did the refeed on Friday, which is typical because I typically want to have that the day before the show. Shows are typically on Saturday. Wanted to have the refeed the day before. And then my weight on the morning of the refeed was 158.9. And then 158.9 Saturday morning. Actually, I think I may have actually crossed those numbers. I think it was 159.9 on the morning of, 158.9 after the refeed. So I woke up lighter the day after the refeed, which is perfect. It's what you want to see happen more often than not, because it lets your body know, lets me know that my body soaked up all those refeed nutrients, and I didn't time it too early. I didn't incorporate a refeed too soon, which is good. Before we dive into the refeed, though, let's talk a little bit about cardio. So I accidentally did 25 minutes at level 15. I meant to only do 20 minutes. Hit my stopwatch, and I guess I was just in the zone, totally did not even feel it going off, and just cranked out another 5 minutes. So I did 25 minutes at level 15 on Wednesday, and then 20 minutes at level 15 on Thursday. So I'm keeping with those 2 sessions a week of the cardio. That said, I have definitely started incorporating more walking this week in preparation for the 50-mile march I have next week. So getting some additional cardio from the walking. I'm typically doing 2 to 3, sometimes 4 miles a day with the walking, trying to get my feet conditioned for that march. So throughout the week, my macros were 125 grams of fat, 200 grams of protein, 15 grams of total carbs, for a total of 1985 on the calories. And for the refeed, I had 190 grams of fat, 190 grams of protein, 20 grams of total carbs. So again, generally speaking, with my prep protocol, you're not going to be doing a 1-to-1 fat to protein, but because I'm having to manipulate this with my prep being as long as it is, my refeed wound up being about a 1-to-1, which yields a total percentage of calories coming from dietary fat at around 67.1% here on the refeed. So let me show you what those meals look like. So on the typical day-to-day of this week, pretty much as it's been uniform, here I've got my 7 tablespoons of my coffee creamer, not heavy cream, just that nut pod creamer. I have my 1 meal a day, which is consisting of the 4 eggs, 4 ounces of salmon, 180 grams of egg whites, a pound of Axis venison, and then the 1 whole keto brick. And that pretty much brings me to my macros for the day. I've been tracking my sodium consistently up to this point for the past 2 weeks because I know that I am going to be incorporating refeeds now, and those refeeds entail a very specific manipulation to electrolytes. So I wanted to get a solid baseline in preparation for those manipulations. So I've been consuming pretty much about 12 grams of sodium a day for the past 2 weeks as a baseline. That's coming from 2 hydration packets. That's Mark Bell's Within You brand. It's like a cocoa-flavored electrolyte blend with some amino acids. It's very, very tasty. I've been putting This classic buffalo seasoning in my OMAD meal, energized reds, 1 scoop of Relight, 1 scoop of Mike Muscle's Myoscience, 3 packets of Element on average, and then 10 grams of salt on my OMAD meal. That yields about 12,000 milligrams of sodium a day. So that's been pretty much my baseline sodium intake a day. Every time I have 1,000 milligrams of sodium, I'm typically drinking that with 25 fluid ounces of water and 1 teaspoon of upgraded formulas potassium. That's a very easily absorbable potassium, so that's what I've been doing there to kind of keep my electrolyte ratios in check. Now, this was every day this week except for the refeed. On the refeed day, which again was 190 grams of fat, 190 grams of protein, I structured this meal to basically have 2 meals a day. I want to backload the majority of my calories for the refeed meal a little bit later in the day, because when you're manipulating electrolytes and when you're manipulating macros to peak for a specific time, you've only got about 24 to 48 hours for your body to make use of those electrolyte fluctuations before it returns to a homeostatic equilibrium again. So I'm trying to mimic my show day as much as I possibly can with these trial refeeds so that I have a very clear understanding of how my body responds to it on the actual show day. So on refeed day this week, which was the 18th, I had my 7 tablespoons of creamer, as always, and then I had 8 eggs and 5 ounces of venison for that first meal. So 78 grams of protein, 34 grams of fat, so not very much fat early in the day there. And then for the refeed meal itself, I made my ketogenic caloric refeed pizza, which is like basically a fathead pizza crust, and I made that with 20 grams of almond flour, 1 Bell's Brownie keto brick. That was not in the pizza, that's just something I ate. The pizza itself was the almond flour, 6 ounces of 85-15 beef, and then 5 ounces of mozzarella cheese. I did not put any other toppings on there. I did not put pesto on there. It was a pretty simple, plain pizza, but it was so delicious. And then with the electrolyte manipulation, what I did here was basically add an additional 7 grams of real salt. So I'm normally taking in 10 grams. I had 17 grams that day. The additional 7 grams went on top of that refeed pizza, so I can get a bolus of sodium with that refeed meal. That brought my total sodium intake for the day up to about 14,000 milligrams. Generally, when it comes to manipulating electrolytes, I'm working with my clients, it kind of depends how sensitive they are to sodium. If they are very sensitive, I'll be more conservative with that bump on refeed day, and I may only increase their sodium 500 milligrams above baseline. I know how my body responds. I also know that I was working outside all this weekend, and I was sweating quite a bit, so I was a little bit more aggressive with the refeed sodium intake, and I bumped that up an additional 2,000 milligrams over baseline. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty much what my meal for the refeed consisted of, the refeed pizza. So that said, let's dive into some of the changes in measurements that have gone on. So you can kind of see some measurements here from prior weeks. I rounded out this week on 8/18 prior to the refeed with a neck measurement of 14.15, shoulders of 46, chest of 39.5, biceps unflexed 14, flexed 15.25, belly button 30.5, hips 35.75, thighs 22.25, calves 15.25. Again, these measurements were taken before the refeed when I am pretty flat. That refeed helps fill out my muscle glycogen. That sodium helps draw the fluid in my subcutaneous layer of skin into the muscle tissue, which also fills it out. So if I were to have done these measurements post-refeed, you would likely see a slight increase in circumference. Now, with the body fats, I've been doing the Inbody pretty much every week, and it is holding steady at about 3% body fat via the Inbody. I did a caliper test measurement with this as well. The last time I did a caliper test, it was 4.75%. This week, if I remember correctly, it was 4.14%. So the caliper measurement is going down, so that's always a plus. Now, let's dive into some posing footage here. This is before the refeed, so this is not footage post-refeed. I'll talk about that at a later date. So here we go with the posing. We got the front relaxed here. You can see more striations. Every week, we're just getting more and more dialed in, y'all. And y'all can probably see this now, especially if you go back and look at footage from prior weeks. I just have much more, definition and visibility in the actual muscle separation, more vascularity, more striations, more visible muscle tie-ins. Just everything's sharper. And again, this video footage didn't even do the pictures justice. Like, you can't see all the vascularity in my abdominals and obliques in this footage, whereas you can in the mirror. So it's just things are moving along very nicely right now. I'm very pleased with how my body's responding. So here we got the side tricep, doing that classic side tricep pose. I've tweaked this a little bit since this footage. It looks a little bit more polished now, but it's getting there for sure. We got the back lat spread, and then we got my lights out pose here, back double bicep. This is my best pose for sure, but just a lot more hamstring definition in these back poses. And honestly, from the side poses, I'm kind of wearing longer shorts here, but you can see the glute separation coming more pronounced there in the very bottom of my glutes, which I'm super excited about as well. All right, so going into the signature pose, actually that's my double bicep pose, then hands over head abdominal thigh. Again, just more striations in the quads, the teardrops, going into the hands on hip most muscular, and then the crab most muscular there, and that's pretty much rounding out the posing footage. I've got more footage just from the opposite direction, but pretty much the same thing, so I'm not going to run through that again. But all this to say that the refeed has gone exceedingly well. It was absolutely delicious eating that pizza. I'll throw in some B-roll footage here. This is basically me before consuming that pizza. Here's me eating the pizza, which was amazing, like I said. And then here's some footage after me having that refeed. So I ate the refeed meal, waited about 25, 30 minutes, let my body soak up some of that sodium, and then hit a couple more poses just to see the difference there. Again, this difference was even more pronounced the following day, but we'll show that footage at a later date. This is pretty much immediately post-refeed meal. So what's happening there is your body is taking that additional sodium, and that sodium, like I said earlier, is taking the fluid in your subcutaneous layer of skin, drawing it into the muscle tissue so your skin appears thinner, which brings out more vascularity and more definition in the actual muscle fibers, and then you just soak that all up. A lot of people say you have to have carbohydrates to fill out and replenish muscle glycogen, which is certainly true. You can replenish muscle glycogen with additional carbohydrates. But keep in mind, once you become fat adapted, your body's ability to preserve and replenish muscle glycogen in the complete absence of carbohydrates is significantly improved. And then whatever needs to happen from a glucose standpoint, you're able to do via gluconeogenesis. So there's not really this inherent need to consume dietary carbohydrates in order to fill out and look vascular and have a great pump. I'm recording this on Monday, the Monday after this refeed meal, and I just got done training full body and hitting some poses. My muscles are so full now after that workout as a result of that refeed meal, and I had very minimal carbohydrates. I think my total carbohydrate intake for the day was like 25 grams, and most of that is coming from the, trace carbohydrates in the electrolyte supplements I'm taking in. So I'm most definitely not consuming dietary carbohydrates as a means of filling out fuller and further, rather. So hopefully this illustrates the fact that you do not have to consume dietary carbohydrates to peak and perform optimally in the context of bodybuilding. So let that point ring true hardcore, because I want to just drive that point home. So we got a lot of things coming up here in the pipeline. Like I said, this coming week, we've got the 50-mile march. I'm a little bit concerned to see how my body recovers from that, because literally we marched through the night. We marched 22 hours straight, 50 miles, and then we end on Sunday, and then Monday is the start of peak week. So I may have to get a little creative on how I time my refeed, my training, all of my peak week strategy. But I'll keep you up to date with that peak week. And then literally that next weekend is the first competition of the season. So lots of things in the pipeline, very exciting stuff. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we will see y'all next time.